Hey there. Welcome to the Following Films podcast. I'm your host, Chris Maynard. Thanks for joining me today. On this episode, we're diving into a story that blends nostalgia, music, and the origins of esports. A follow-up to one of the most beloved documentaries in gaming history. I'm talking about Arcades and Love Songs, The Ballad of Walter Day. This film is the featured directorial debut from Oscar-winning producer Ed Cunningham, who's best known for Undefeated and The King of Kong, A Fistful of Quarters. If you're a fan of the latter, you're in for a real treat, because this film brings us back into the world of Walter Day, the iconic star of King of Kong, and the man often credited as the father of esports. Now at 74, Walter is taking center stage once again in this musical documentary that follows his legal battle to protect his legacy, all while chasing a long-held dream, recording and performing the rock opera love songs that have been echoing in his mind since his heart was broken back in the golden days of the arcade. This episode features not one, but two great interviews. First up, we have Ed Cunningham, the director of Arcades and Love Songs, and then the legend himself, Walter Day. We'll talk about everything from the making of the film to Walter's unique musical vision, to what this journey has meant to him personally. So whether you're a longtime fan of The King of Kong, a lover of indie film, or just curious about this one-of-a-kind story, stick around. You don't want to miss this one. Hope you enjoy the show. Hey Ed, how are you today?
Good, Chris. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem.
I was so excited when Annie sent this over to get to spend more time with these people that I fell in love with almost 20 years ago now, which is crazy that it's been that long. I'm just curious. You do a really good job of setting the stage for somebody who hasn't seen King of Kong, but I think that clearly this is a companion piece to that film and a continuation, something that I think reframes a lot of what people took away from that film. Was that part of the intention here to sort of maybe take some assumptions we had from that film and maybe shed a different light on it?
Well, that happened for me, Chris,
Yeah.
because when in 2018, when Billy was accused of cheating, I called him immediately to apologize because that was never our intent of the movie. Yes, we felt like he got preferential treatment. Yes, we felt like he worked the system a little bit, but we had never in our wildest dreams thought the guy was cheating. I mean, he
Right.
was always one of the top gamers. Historically, people who, watched him play talked about it, what a genius he was. So when I first reconnected with Billy in 18 or 19, and then when Walter got sued and pulled into that lawsuit, it just changed the whole dynamic of what I was doing. I got involved in helping on Walter's legal defense. And as I got to know Billy, he was a different guy. Billy was just a different person than we dealt with back in 2006 and 2007. And so for me, it was a reframing. So I just took my personal experience. And I will point out the editor, Mike J. Nichols, we spent a lot of time talking about how I felt
Mhm.
about certain scenes, about how I felt about Billy, about how I felt about how things happen. And he really did a great job of conveying that to the audience and giving the audience the same experience. This was not meant to be a makeup piece or, sort of, we literally I met a different Billy Mitchell this time around than I did the first time around. And he was just so true to his friend. And
Mm.
I wouldn't have made this film if this became a Billy mouthpiece.
Of course.
If I wouldn't have, if he wanted to take charge or be the star of the movie, I just wouldn't have made it. And from the start, he wasn't that. He was so supportive of Walter. What can I do for you guys? How can I help? He was so giving of his time. So we just try to truthfully convey in the film what I experienced, which was a totally different guy. He really is just a more mellow, more humble. I mean, he's still Billy. He's still got the thumbs
Yeah.
up and he still wears the gear and all of that. But he was really a different person. And I think that for me, and one of the reviews even pointed out that that's one of the more compelling parts of the film is just seeing this guy in a different light. He himself is more three-dimensional than he was when we, worked with him back then. So I just tried to convey my feelings and how I felt different this time than I did when we were filming King of Kong.
Well, there's two things that are happening there. I think all of us, as we age, a little bit of our hubris dies down, hopefully,
Yes.
and we have a little bit more self awareness. But there's also it made me think when I was watching this that Billy was probably just playing the part of a heel. That he was just that was the role that he wanted to play just to make this an interesting story. And so you can lean into that if you want to, and anytime he's around you and he's around a crew and he's making this film, it's okay. I'm in performance mode this whole time, and that makes sense.
We felt that way the whole time we were
Okay.
making King of Kong. We sort of, I mean, look, there were some weird things that happened. Him
Of
sending
course.
that tape and
Yeah.
and getting it approved right away, that was not okay. And we had to present that the way we saw it when it happened. At the same time, we always used to call him the Raiders. He was the bad guy in a black
Yeah.
hat who clearly, and I've talked to him about this, and we actually interviewed him a little bit, but it just didn't fit the film, that he did realize that a lot of gamers during that era were, oh, shucks, we're going to go for the record. And
Okay.
it's,
Yeah.
yeah. And so he saw an opportunity for the bad guy, the heel, to come through, and he leaned into it completely. And then, one of the pushbacks on King of Kong was, oh, you painted this guy in a bad light. And we are like, no, that's the
It's
light he shows up
all
in.
stuff he said and did. It's not.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, we didn't choose that. He chose that. But it's interesting you mentioned the heel. I didn't know this until recently. It's been really cool to have King of Kong fans reach out, thank us for what we did back then, and also talk about how the movie really impacted them. And one thing I didn't know until recently is because of the heel babyface storyline,
Yeah.
King of Kong is huge with wrestling
Of
fans and
course. Yeah.
wrestlers. I had no idea. I mean, I know what that means when you say it, but not being a wrestling fan.
I'm not a wrestling fan either, but I know that one thing, that one little piece of terminology that you're like that you can just apply to so many different stories, and it's just a wrestling trope. It's a story they
Totally.
always use. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, it's a the thing is that was always a disconnect for me though was because Walter just came across as so genuine in that, and it's didn't really click though. That these two people were so close, it made me think that there was something off with Walter that I wasn't seeing instead of the other way around, which was probably the deeper truth was that there was something about Billy that we weren't seeing the whole time. And I love that we get to spend more time with Walter because it just ends up really reinforcing those things that I had thought about. He seemed like such a good guy in the first film.
Yeah.
There's you don't come across he doesn't he seems like a Buddhist monk to me in a lot of ways. So it's
Yeah.
it's hard to take a negative reaction from him. I'm just wondering though, this idea of this performance though, and centering the film around this music. You could have focused on sort of the legal troubles or gone through that and made it wildly different, but you really just told this about somebody moving on to a different phase of their life, which I think is a really important story. That's something that you can redefine yourself at 73. And how amazing is that?
Yeah. Yeah. His age, it was funny. We got feedback when we were doing test screenings about how amazing it was that a guy at this age was doing this. And I sort of missed that when we were filming because I've
Hmm.
known Walter for so long. I've known he's got a great energy level, a great passion. He's a very creative guy. It was 20 years ago this spring that we first flew to Iowa and started filming with
Wow.
him, and that was the first time we heard him play his songs and tell us about this music that he started hearing in his head when he had his heart broken. And so, for us, the lawsuit and the controversy and him
Yeah.
being called that he was in cahoots with Billy. I mean, it's fascinating that lawsuit. It was so bogus, and as a matter of fact, the lawyer may end up really having a problem with the bar because it was a very frivolous lawsuit to the point where they claimed that Billy and Walter financed the King of Kong, and it's like I paid for it on my Southwest Airlines credit card, and we
Yeah.
flew Southwest Airlines to make the movie. Like I can show you those records that that's not the case. But for us, with the story of Walter, I was way more interested in his journey to becoming a singer-songwriter than I was the lawsuit, because there's a miniseries to be made about all those lawsuits and what transpired after
Oh
the
yeah.
film, and we just weren't interested in King of Kong 2. That wasn't our interest. Nobody had any appetite for that on the creative side. And I really the guy who made the trailer for the film, he watched the movie. He actually went back and watched the King of Kong. And when we sat down with him and said, "Okay, what do you think the trailer is?" He said, "I think this is a story about a guy with this amazing history who wants to be a singer songwriter. This is a singer songwriter movie," and that's
Yeah.
really was what our intent was. And a lot of that was in the King of Kong, Walter, we have a scene that I'm very proud of. It's actually one that I helped edit when we were making the film, was showing that Walter really didn't want to be this referee guy anymore. I mean, you talked about Buddhist monk. It just didn't fit his personality
No.
to be a rule keeper. He had this great idea, and then all of a sudden he's this official for games, and he just didn't want to do it anymore. And so the fact that he was paying off this dream that he had shared in King of Kong. The line is, I don't want to be a referee anymore. I want to be an artist up there, being wild and crazy and sharing my music. And then to be able to make that into a movie that he finally did it. And it was funded by fans from the King of Kong. It made it like the perfect circle. It all just came around. And so our intent was always to use the lawsuit, which didn't get dismissed until we were done filming. It's an
Oh
epilogue
wow.
now in the credits. So it was
Yeah.
hanging over his head the whole time. And our goal was to use that as, we call that the Act Two rug pull.
Yeah.
That's what we saw it as, and we never really had an interest in anything other than this is an elderly man facing a frivolous lawsuit based on a film that became a classic through no fault of his own, and that it was real. It raised the stakes. If he just wanted to make the music, and if we didn't have the muse participate,
Mm,
this could have been a pretty shallow film. It could have been, I mean, frankly, it would have been a short film if it was just that. But
sure.
with the lawsuit and with her participation, I think it gives it the depth it needs to be a feature.
Well, yeah, it's something that I think it's important to have the kind of wrap up from King. There'd be so many questions if you just went into the music, there's all these things that people want to know about, but you service that curiosity plenty, and there's no need to go into any more depth than you do here with it. I think it answers everything, and then you can move on to what the real heart of the story is. And the thing that's truly moving, that by the end of this, when you have this live performance and the Q&A in between specifically, it's so moving. I don't know how you can see that and not just be absolutely touched and just have a different sense of self when you see that. I'm 48. And so I think in a lot of ways that, okay, I'm kind of settled in. This is who I am. I know what things are comfortable and what works for me but maybe there are things I should change about myself, things that I could change and that, there are new adventures to be had in the, later years of your life. And I just to continually be curious and striving for new things. I think that's such a wonderful message.
And the other thing that was really beautiful for us, and I'm glad you brought up that Q&A between the songs. I was scared to death when Walter walked on stage and froze. I mean, he froze. I've
Yeah.
never seen Walter freeze. He walked up on that stage, and there's a moment in the film where he says, "Oh, I wasn't nervous," and then he just stops. I was in the back of the room. We had 6 cameras going, spending a lot of money to shoot this, and I'm thinking, "Oh no, he's going to totally bomb. He's going to totally bomb." And it was the audience, it was his friends, it was his supporters who gave him the belief in himself, who gave him the energy to, by the end, when he's singing his encore, he nails it.
Yeah.
He absolutely nails it. And I remember as I was in the back of the room and he was singing that encore, I was just like, oh, thank God. Thank God. Because how do you end the movie? How do you end the movie if he stinks and it's no good? But it really was. I'm glad you noticed that. And I think Mike J. Nichols, the editor, did just an incredible job of how he went between the questions and the next song and what we heard. It was a 48-minute show that we cut down to 17 minutes in the movie. And I think he found the best moments where Walter needed support.
Well, And you don't just cut to the good part, which a lot of filmmakers would have done. You give this room for him to feel uncomfortable, get a little bit better, get a little bit closer. His sense of humor starts to come out, and you can see just how utterly charming he is and why there's this room full of people to support a guy singing over this music. It's just you get why everyone's there, and it doesn't have to be a perfect concert in that way. It doesn't your expectation is not that. You just want him so desperately, for me personally, not to trip. You just want him
Yeah.
to succeed. That's it. And I love that he got there and he absolutely did the thing. And it's such a beautiful, beautiful moment. And even the way that you edit the scenes in the performance where you're fading from one shot to another in the camera, and it has a certain style to it that it almost feels like you're showing Walter's point of view of what he would want this to look like. That I
Oh
think
wow.
it's so much fun. I really love the way it was put together.
Oh, cool. Yeah, what we had really what was helpful for us was we started editing after that show. So we'd
Mm,
shot almost everything. We had to go back for follow-up interviews and pickups and stuff. That was in February. We had to go back in April. But in that meantime, Mike, the editor, he cut together the entire show. So he cut together through all the cameras a 49-minute version of that
wow.
show so that we could look at it and say, okay, we've got this. Now let's go back to a scene earlier and what do we want to set up? Who do we want to show? What do we want them to have say? So that was nice. We had our ending. And so we were able to then go back as we constructed the film to make sure that when you got to the end and you saw the guys from Color Switch, you saw Billy supporting him, you saw Steve Sanders, you saw the people from the community there to support him. You'd already seen these people and you'd seen their
Yeah.
perspective, and we felt like that just made he really Mike did such a terrific job with that end scene. And a big part of that was we needed to show that without those people, without Billy, without Steve, without the Color Switch guys, without Doug Dowler, his voice coach sitting right there,
Yeah.
he probably does fail. It probably, I don't know that he would have recovered from being that nervous. He had never, ever performed in public, not once. I
No.
asked him on the way, I go, hey man, don't you, maybe you should go do just a little like open mic. He's like, nope, I want it to be the first time I do it. I'm like, you sure about this, dude? And so when he walked out and started tripping over himself, I was freaking out. I was like, "Oh my God, what are we gonna?" I literally thought for a moment, "We don't have a movie if he doesn't pull it together." But as he got his confidence, as the audience started to tell him, especially after the second song, your voice got stronger. I could hear you. You
That
could just see
yeah.
him really lean into that love and that support. And when he finished that last song, and I will say this because I his music is exceptional. He
Yeah.
is a fantastic songwriter. The harmonies, the melodies, the layers of the harmonies, they're so memorable. There's so many hooks that when he was playing that second song, the crowd was singing along with him. That Hold Me song just has such
Yeah.
a lovely chorus that the second time they heard it, the crowd was singing along with him and mouthing the words. It was really I was sort of behind the audience or next to it, so I didn't get to see the audience until we were watching the footage. I was like, oh my God, they got it. They really got it. And, it was beautiful because I've been hearing it for 20 years and I knew it was good. I knew it was, memorable and had hooks, but to have an audience really lean in and get the music and sing along, I mean, that was a big moment. When he finished that last encore, I was just like, oh, we have a movie.
Well, and you have the whole in that 17 minutes of the film that really that's a huge chunk of this as far as the entire piece that but you tell an entire arc within that 17 minutes and you give it that room to breathe with it, which I think is absolutely necessary because at first when I'm watching it I'm used to typical editing with this and I'm expecting to show the little bit of a trip, the recovery, than the nailing it. But you let it go out for so long that it builds this tension beneath it, and that you're just it's such a wonderful, wonderful way of doing this. And I think it really does honor Walter Day as a man because he's
Oh,
such
thanks.
a great guy, and
Yes.
at least Who knows? I have never spent a minute with the man,
No, he
but you
is.
definitely painted a
Yeah.
really lovely portrait of this man.
Yeah, I actually battled a bit with Mike, the editor, on the length of the show. And because he does an encore of the same song, I said, well, why don't we just do one version of that song? And so he cut that version where it just did one
Yeah,
singing of Hold Me. And it didn't have that tension. It didn't have that resolution, especially for Shane, the muse, for her to hear the first song, which is Three Lies. And
yeah,
here's a woman who cheated on him, and she's completely uncomfortable and she was mortified. But to then come fully around to hearing this lovely, beautiful song, just literally saying, Hold me. I mean, like the most vulnerable thing you can tell someone is hold me, right? And Mike was right. We needed that much time for that tension to play out and also for her story and her experience in that room to fully come around to okay, he doesn't hate me. Yes, the first song was a little rough, but by the end, it's a really beautiful, heartfelt song. And I appreciate you noticing that because we worked relentlessly on that scene. What sound bites to use. We made the choice to never leave the that scene except
yeah.
for the two quotes by Shane at the end where she talks about he wouldn't have had this if he'd come with me. That was the only time we left that room was to have her because we felt like we had to give her her final statement. Because she was really trusting in what we were doing with her story and really vulnerable with us. And frankly, she's amazing. She's so
I,
good on camera. It's unbelievable.
I find out one of my exes wrote 138 songs about me. I want nothing to do with that. I'm
Yeah.
gone. So
Yeah, I'm going to change my name and move. I know.
it's a
Yeah, and
special kind of person.
she just handled it really well. And I spent a lot of time on the phone with her. I had her watch the movies I'd made and said, "Hey, a lot of people have shared, really deep things with us, and I want you to see how we've handled it in the past." So luckily, I had something I could point to and say, "Hey, I've done this before. I'm not going to screw you over." And it was really important in that scene, and it's why we needed the second performance of Hold Me because there's a shot of her actually mouthing the words
Yeah.
in that second
Yep.
version that was just with like, oh my God, that's the perfect moment for us to have, which we wouldn't have had if we only did it once. And so, yeah, we battled back and forth. It started at about 23 minutes. We cut it back. And then when we got to about 17 minutes, it just felt right. And that tension, it's 11 or so minutes
Yeah.
where you're like, oh my God, what's going to happen here? He's off tune.
Yeah.
He's off time. But by the end, he was in tune. He was on time. He knew his lyrics.
His
And
volume's there.
I
He's not
know.
whispering into it. It's just I mean, I know we're at time right now. Ed, I could talk to you about this all day, and I'm glad that you titled this Ballad of Walter Day because that is what this is. And I think that even if this is something you haven't seen King of Hong, you don't know anything about this man, you will find something in this story that'll be inspiring. I mean, this is really anybody who has felt love and lost it. I think you will see shades of yourself in here. In that last 17 minutes, it's really that whole arc of recovery that we all go through from having a broken heart to where you
Yeah.
accept it. And it's the end that we come to. There's no bitterness for anybody that broke my heart now. It's I want nothing but the best for those people that meant something to me at some point in my life. And there will always be a part of my heart that belongs to others. And, it's just,
Yeah.
I think that it's such a beautiful encapsulation of that. So congratulations
Thank
on
you.
this, Ed. You got a great one here, man.
Oh, I appreciate it, Chris. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you for taking the time.
Yeah. We'll see you soon.
Take care. Hey, Walter, how are you today?
I'm doing good, Chris. How are you doing?
Really, really well. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this, man. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me on the show.
Well, the first thing I got to ask is there's just an incredible amount of vulnerability that you showed in not only this performance that documentary is being centered around, but also the ability to have that filmed. How were you able to go through this process and be so just open and naked in a way with this?
Well, those are the right words that I've actually used myself. Completely naked, completely wide open, completely exposed, completely vulnerable. Getting up on the stage was such an amazing experience. So maybe I should tell you how this all happened.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Please.
So in 1985, at the height of the video game era, when I was the king of video games along with Billy Mitchell and other people, uh, excuse me, I had a glamorous girlfriend who one night called me up and said, Walter, I secretly have been seeing a friend of yours. And that completely took me by surprise and broke my heart. And in such heartbreak that after about a week of being heartbroken, I started hearing music come and play. Excuse me. I had music. I started hearing music play in like my chest and my heart, my head. It was original songs with melodies and hooks, harmonics, lyrics, and stuff like that. And I was completely transfixed by this music. And I excitedly began to record it I film, tape it in a recorder and write it down in notebooks and stuff like that. And by the time this phenomenon was done, 138 songs had come out, all connected to the emotional, process of going through heartbreak and stuff like that. And even though I wasn't a singer and never had any intentions on being a singer, I vowed that someday I would get up on the stage and I would sing my songs to the public and perform my music and produce it. And so I had that strong desire that became like a defining factor in my life for all those years. 20 years later, after this all happened, the King of Kong happened. And as I'm getting interviewed for this, I talk openly with the editors, the producers of the movie that, look, I've been the video game guy for all these years, but I want to retire and I want to do my music. And I explain to them the whole story of the music. And I actually get recorded in the movie singing and playing some of the songs. And they said to me afterwards that of all the people in the movie, the person who was the most interesting to them was me, which is very flattering. And so they were impressed with the music, they were impressed with my story, but that was the end of the King of Kong. Almost 20 years later after that, I'm at an event in Pomona, California, and out of the crowd walks a man named David Reichelt. And he had created a popular, very successful mobile game called Colors, and he become wealthy. And he asked me, well, whatever happened with that music? Whatever came out of that? And I said, it's still my living dream to fulfill that in this life and do my music. But there's just so many obstacles and it's so expensive and stuff like that. And so he said on the spot, Walter, I'm going to use my wealth to help you produce I'm going to produce your music. I'm going to put the money up and I'll pay all expenses as a gift to you with no strings attached. So Color Switch suddenly has me in a music studio recording my songs and actually producing my music. And meanwhile, the producers of The King of Kong from 20 years earlier learned that Walter Day's finally doing his music, and they decided, wow, this is the great story. The story of a man who never gave up his dreams, who always believed in his vision, and proved that it's never too late.
Well, I think that's the inspiration of this film, the thing that everybody will take something away from. That you can redefine yourself at any stage of your life, it's not over for you. You can choose to do different, new, adventurous things. And I think that and taking this path is such a incredible leap of faith for you to take that, to have this in the back of your mind for over 40 years and to actually make that wish fulfillment happen is just incredible, because there's this thing that you can have where you think about something for so long, and then the reality of it might be something different than what you expected. What was it like to have something sort of be in the back of your mind for almost half a century and then to actually have that become a reality?
Well, it's real interesting. I live in Fairfield, Iowa, a town of 10,000 people. And in this town of 4,000 people, over 4,000 of them practice transcendental meditation. It's a real interesting community. But TM, you probably know about TM. You sit down and do it for 20 minutes in the morning, 20 minutes in the evening, but it actually changes the way your nervous system works so that your cardiovascular becomes healthier. You get rid of deep-seated stresses, but also the creative process becomes richer and brighter and clearer because you're getting stress out of the brain. And so I had this phenomenon from being a longtime meditator that the richness of my creative processes for doing the music was becoming stronger and stronger and stronger. So it's almost like I couldn't give it up in the first place because it was becoming so dominant and real, and it was just this creative process for meditating was just driving me all these years to want to actually bring this to life, so that I didn't, in other words, I didn't, you know how you talk about shutting down as you get
Yeah.
older? I wasn't shutting down at all. I was blossoming and opening up for more and more desire and expectation and energy directed towards doing the music. So I was really excited all the way through the 40 years about doing the music, but still I was beginning worried that I'm getting older. Is this going to happen? Is my dream never going to be realized? And
Mhm.
suddenly, like in the bottom of the ninth inning, the Reichelt brothers, Chris and Dave Reichelt, step forward. They say, "We believe in your dream, and we liked how you were in King of Kong, and we want to bring your dream to fruition."
It's incredible. I'm so happy they did this because the film itself is just so warm and so life affirming. And to watch this and to watch your performance is so it's it's for lack of a better word, and I think it's the appropriate. It's very moving to see
That's
this, and
right.
so I
That,
was
that,
deeply touched by it. So
That's wonderful. And when we saw the film just a couple of weeks ago in Long Beach at the art
Mhm.
theater there, the I was taken by surprise. I'd seen earlier iterations of the film, and I didn't think, "Oh, this is no big deal. It's going to be boring, and no one's going to care." But but they were able to re-edit it such so that all the important elements of it would be able to shine through, so that it became really a lesson in humility, a lesson in and the kind sweetness between me and Shane. It's like, it's maybe it's an example of how you should handle heartbreak. I don't know, because there never was any anger involved and being left behind, but there was just the realization that, well, some things just have to happen.
yeah,
And it says in the movie, if it hadn't have been for us breaking up, there would have been no King of Kong. So maybe there's a silver lining in everything.
well, it's the sort of sliding doors thing, the different paths our lives could have taken by being open to something, and that you could have gone down this path if you wouldn't have agreed to be in that documentary 20 years ago, then all of the dream maybe would never have been fully realized, or at least in this way that it was, because somebody was inspired by that film and wanted to help make your dream a reality. But um, a specific question about the songs: how much did they change from the time that you sort of were inspired and they just appeared to you, not really wrote them, but they just came to you fully
Oh,
formed?
it was like listening to a radio station playing the songs. They would come out in many very completed forms. It was just, I mean, I mean, many recording artists that talked about that
Yeah.
you'd snatch them out of the air. I was snatching them out of the air. I didn't, as they say in the King of Kong 20 some years ago. Uh, excuse me. I didn't really. It's almost as if I didn't write the songs. It's more like that I listened to the songs. I heard them playing, and I just pulled them out of the air. But then there's the actual fine tuning
Right.
of actually making sure that the lyrics fit and everything like that, and composing the lyrics as well as they can. Because uh, the Bee Gees talked about this. They said they had an idea for a song, and they heard the song, and then they
Yeah.
said, "We went to the studio and we worked it out, and it was done." They literally said this. Now it's done. Now all we have to do is write the lyrics. So that's so interesting. So I was having the exact same spirit as them, where I'd hear actually the form and the syllabic expression
Hmm.
of lyrics, even though the lyrics weren't written. I'd hear actually all the different parts of the music and all the orchestration, because I hear orchestrations and everything. So it was a real interesting experience and very challenging. Very
Now,
challenging.
you play guitar. At the time, did you play other instruments as well to have
Well,
that
I, I
understanding?
I used to be a ragtime piano performer.
Oh,
I used to
really?
play Scott Joplin and stuff like that, and I actually got really good, and I did some pretty big performances. And but I let that fall to the wayside and stopped caring about it, which is a huge disappointment to me to today, because I can't play any of the songs anymore.
Hmm.
I could probably learn them pretty fast, but at 75, I don't have. I just don't think I'm gonna put any time to trying to relearn my ragtime songs. But in reality, if I still could play them, I'd probably be outperforming as a ragtime performer.
Oh, that's great. I mean, that music, there's something Scott Joplin specifically, my 9-year-old discovered Scott Joplin just through one of the streaming apps playing music and is obsessed, listens to it all the time. So it's just very strange how that it still held up. It's connected with them for some reason. So love that stuff.
Those songs are now 130 years old.
I know. It's just incredible stuff. There's just something about it that I think that you have to be in touch with when you are a musician or when you're meditating and kind of your releasing of yourself to be, to get in touch with that muse or that inspiration or that voice, whatever that thing is in the back of your mind. And I guess if I've heard it described as a flow state where you just allow it to move through you and you try not to put up any barriers of judgment or anything, and you just allow that thing to happen. I don't have that. I play guitar very poorly, but the idea of being in that meditative state, which came first for you? Was it the meditation or the music?
Oh, the meditation came first. It's okay. See, transcendental meditation is a big deal. Scientists, people are studying it avidly now because it's an ancient technique that actually changes. What it does is it removes deep-seated stresses from the nervous system so that your normal mental potential is fully unfolded and your full creative potential is fully unfolded. So when I began to hear the music, I was very blessed because I already had as a basic ground state, the creative expression already turned on by practicing transcendental meditation. So it was like they just fit together. And so it made it probably easier for me to bring the music to life than it would have been for me if I hadn't been practicing transcendental meditation and having the benefits from the mind-body coordination already real.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Is that now? I have never practiced TM. The only understanding I have of it is really, do you have like a single mantra that you're repeating through that? Is that part of it?
What happens is you have to transcend the thought process.
Right.
TM is different from every other meditation in that every other meditation involves just thinking thoughts or focusing on things. But TM is a mantra, and the mantra is a vehicle to bring you down to the basis of the mind where there is what they call pure consciousness. And when you touch that pure consciousness, it turns out to be a source of creativity, energy, and happiness, and creativity, happiness, and energy. And you begin to tap that source of pure consciousness and bring it up into your daily life so that it actually affects and changes the way you are on the surface level of your mind so that you start thinking more creatively, more intelligently, having more emotional, it's like they use the word actualizing, but removing psychological and emotional stresses. And so with the removal of psychological and emotional stresses, you have a lot more clarity and a lot more creative expression. So it's really amazing. At the same time, it's doing tremendous things to your heart and your cardiovascular system. So I can't begin to praise transcendental meditation enough, and also give a lot of credit to it for me being able to grab that music and make something out of it.
What is going on in this small town in Iowa that has this much TM? Because that's something you would expect to see that in Los Angeles, New York, but not. I think that's a different perception than we have of Iowa.
There's a full-blown university here called Maharishi International University, and it's a school where they still teach physics and computer science and stuff like that, but everybody practices transcendental meditation as a hands-on technique for expanding consciousness and unfolding your pure creative intelligence. So it's very interesting. It's a very famous school. They have these two, look it up sometime. They have these two golden dome-shaped buildings where thousands of people get together in them and they meditate.
Wow. Now, okay. If somebody, I'm sorry to focus on this, but I'm just actually very interested in it. For somebody who's never done that, I've meditated. I like to meditate every day. I think slowing down, paying attention to my breathing, something's very helpful, but I've never had any real structure around it. If I wanted to learn more about TM and something I wanted to try to start to practice,
all you have to do is go online to tm.org. The website there will give you a box that says, "How can I find a local teacher?" And they'll connect you to a local certified teacher.
Done. Okay. So
are you going to go to the Chinese theater to see the showing of the movie?
I'm based in Arizona, so I'm in Tucson actually. So it would be if I go to premieres, things like that, it's usually going to be up in Phoenix where they would have those kinds of screenings. But yes, if I was in the Los Angeles area, I would 100% go up to the Chinese to see it because I would love to see this film in a theater with a crowd
Oh,
because
oh yeah, I'm very intrigued. Well, I'm very intrigued how this is going to play out because, like I've said, it's as you begin our talk, this is a very vulnerable thing for me. Completely naked and exposed, completely wide open, no filters, no. There's no guards on duty. I'm completely all out Walter in front of everybody.
well, and I love that we get as much of the performance as we do, that we get to spend, these almost full songs with you, that we have multiple songs and see and can kind of watch your evolution throughout
Mhm.
the performance and see you get more comfortable and get your sea legs. And, I have you done another performance since this?
Not no, but there will be more performances. I've been
Okay.
I've
When's the
been
next one?
but I've been mainly practicing my singing because I'm not normally a singer, and
Right.
that's part of the drama of it too. Because despite the fact never singing and never believing to sing and never expecting to sing, I got up and sung, and that's part of the inspiration for other people to believe that they can push against their barriers and their borders and their boundaries and make things happen.
Because those borders and barriers and limitations are almost all of them things that we put on ourselves, that we put on our minds. They're things that we hold ourselves to that are not coming from the outside world. They're coming from in here somewhere that we said, and in most of it's just fear, embarrassment or pain or rejection or any of those things that we're just, not allowing ourselves to follow sort of our bliss in the Joseph Campbell way.
Well said. Well said. Well said.
Well, Walter, I got to tell you, man, this has been a pleasure to meet you. I loved the film. I was really, really impressed with it. I was so happy to get to hang out with you for an hour and a half again after 20 years. And I'm hoping that there will be more to come from you. I hope the music isn't going away because I want to support you in any way I can, man. So if there's more music coming down, you're going to stream it, you're going to put it out. There's people that would be there for it, and I'd be one of them.
Well, you know what's interesting? It's almost like there's a cosmic force behind this movie that I'm beginning to accept and begin to realize as I begin to see people responses because it's almost like this force is just taking my simple little story, which was simple and innocent to me,
Yeah.
and turning it into something that's an illustrative lesson plan for other people to see how you can just you never give up and you can make things happen. You can break down your boundaries, face your borders, face your fears, and prove that it's never too late.
And if that's the inspiration you have on people, I assume there's that thing that we all go through when we kind of review our lives and think about the things we've done and the impact we've had. That's got to be a pretty good feeling for you to have that on that's a life well lived.
Oh yeah, and in the process of having this grow, I'm overcoming my own self doubts because I doubted in my own story. I doubted in the destiny of the story, but people are beginning to come around and respect it so much and speak so affectionately of it that it's almost like the small self of Walter Day, has to get out of the way and let the story be of the value it can be to the world.
That's kind of, I think that boil that down to just the idea of witnessing yourself is a really good way to experience life. If you just you kind of get out of your way and just watch yourself move through it, you'll probably get a lot more pleasure out of it than when you're kind of in the muck and going through it and trying to react to things.
Very well said. Very well said.
Well, thank you, Walter. It was a pleasure to meet you, man. I really appreciate it. Thank you for taking time out of your afternoon to do this.
Thank you for having me.
We used some bridges that we wired and blown. That time's over now. So over now. I can't say I'm sad to see it go. That's over now. So over now. So what you doing in a couple of years? On a Saturday, round Halloween, I'll take your hand and I'll spit up fake blood. Show Most people never